5 years of loyalty, 8 successful projects, 3 leadership awards, and then I was called too quiet to lead. A week later, the CEO who sat silent during that meeting was screaming at the shareholders' conference when he realized the $94 million mistake. Me. I just sat there, calm as always, waiting until exactly 9:01. My name is Naomi Keller, and I've spent 5 years perfecting the art of letting my work speak louder than words. At 36, I'd built a reputation at Cortellon Systems as the architect behind our most profitable financial analytics strategies. While others filled conference rooms with buzzwords and bravado, I delivered results that made quarterly reports sing. The Chicago skyline stretched beyond my 14th floor window that Tuesday morning, steel and glass reflecting the harsh November sun. I'd arrived at 7:30 as always, coffee in hand, ready to finalize the Westport federal proposal that had consumed my last 3 months. The notification for the leadership meeting popped up on my screen at 8:45, routine. I thought, another chance for Marcus Chen, our CEO, to parade his favorites while I sat quietly in the corner, taking notes that would later become million-dollar implementations. The conference room hummed with masculine energy when I entered. Cole Watkins held court near the projector, his laugh too loud, his gestures too wide. 9 months at the company, and he'd already mastered the art of proximity to power. Always finding reasons to stop by the C-suite, always CCing executives on emails that required no oversight. I took my usual seat by the window, opened my laptop, and waited. Before we dive into Q4 projections, Marcus began, his voice carrying that particular tone that made my stomach tighten. I want to address our leadership evolution. Leadership evolution. Corporate speak for someone's about to get screwed. As we enter this critical growth phase, we need leaders who embody our values of dynamic engagement and collaborative energy. His eyes swept the room, carefully avoiding mine. Leaders who can inspire through presence, who command attention, who fill the room with their vision. Rachel from HR nodded enthusiastically, her red nails clicking against her tablet as she took notes. David Morse, our CCO, leaned back in his chair with the satisfied smile of a man watching his plan unfold. That's why I'm pleased to announce Cole Watkins as our new Director of Strategic Initiatives. The words hit me like ice water, though my expression never changed. 5 years, 8 successful projects that had generated over $200 million in revenue, 3 Leadership Excellence Awards gathering dust on my desk, all reduced to nothing because I didn't fill the room. Naomi, Marcus finally looked at me, his expression almost apologetic. You've been instrumental in developing our strategic framework. We'll need you to ensure a smooth transition over the next 6 weeks. Of course, I said, my voice level, professional. Inside, something crystallized, hard and cold. The thing is, Cole jumped in, already comfortable in his new role. We need leaders who aren't just brilliant behind the scenes. The market demands personalities who can sell the vision, who can energize teams. No offense, Naomi, but you're just too quiet for where we're headed. Too quiet. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Around the table, heads nodded in agreement, even Sarah Lou, whose entire data architecture I'd rebuilt last year, avoided my eyes. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. Buzzwords flew like bullet: synergy, disruption, thought leadership. Cole presented his vision for the department, my ideas, repackaged with animated hand gestures and strategic name-dropping. I sat there, fingers steady on my keyboard, documenting every word, every pause, every telling glance between David and Rachel. At 10:15, Marcus dismissed us with reminders about exciting times ahead and embracing change. I gathered my things methodically, ignored Cole's patronizing offer to grab coffee and talk transition, and walked back to my office with measured steps. Behind my closed door, I allowed myself exactly 60 seconds of fury. Then I opened my email and began forwarding select messages to my personal account, the Westport Federal folder, the Meridian Group analyses, 5 years of relationships, strategies, and subtle intelligence that lived nowhere in our CRM, because I'd learned long ago that knowledge was power, and power was best held close. By noon, I'd mapped out 6 weeks of training materials for Cole, surface-level summaries that looked comprehensive but missed every crucial nuance. Theoretical frameworks divorced from practical application. Contact lists that included everyone except the decision makers who only answered my calls. They wanted quiet. I'd give them exactly what they asked for. And when the silence finally broke, it would sound like $94 million slipping through their fingers. The next morning arrived with freezing rain pelting my apartment windows. I dressed carefully, the same understated black suit I always wore, the same minimal jewelry, the same quiet competence they'd dismissed. By 7:45, I was at my desk, methodically organizing 5 years of work into neat, misleading packages. Cole appeared at 9 sharp, designer coffee in hand, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Ready to make magic happen?" he asked, settling into my guest chair like he owned it. "I've prepared comprehensive transition materials," I said, sliding a pristine binder across the desk. "Everything you need to know about our strategic initiatives." His eyes lit up, such an easy mark. For the next 2 hours, I walked him through frameworks and theories, careful to keep everything just abstract enough to be useless. I explained the Westport Federal opportunity in broad strokes. A significant financial institution exploring analytic solutions, while omitting that the decision maker, Janet Morrison, only took meetings on Thursdays at 2:15, only drank Ethiopian coffee, and had a daughter at Northwestern studying data science. "This is incredible," Cole said, furiously scribbling notes. "You've built something amazing here, Naomi. I promise I'll take good care of it." I smiled, the kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes. "I'm sure you will." That afternoon, I was filing expense reports when my computer chimed. An email thread I wasn't supposed to see Rachel from HR had accidentally hit reply all instead of reply. From Rachel Martinez to David Morse. Marcus Steinberg. Date November 15th, 3:42 p.m. Subject RE. Strategic Transition Planning. David, the groundwork is set. Once Naomi completes the knowledge transfer, we can position Cole as the architect of the Westport deal. The board will eat up his presentation style. Marcus, we'll need your sign-off on the revised org chart before the investor meeting. From David Morse to Rachel Martinez. Marcus Steinberg, date November 15th, 3:51 p.m. Subject RE. Strategic Transition Planning. Perfect. Make sure all documentation credits Cole as lead strategist. Naomi's work is solid, but she lacks executive presence. The investors need to see leadership they can believe in. Let's sync on Monday to finalize the narrative. From Marcus Steinberg to David Morse. Rachel Martinez. Date November 15th, 4:03 p.m. Subject RE. Strategic Transition Planning. Agreed. We can't afford another flat quarterly presentation. Cole has the charisma we need. Just ensure Naomi stays cooperative through the transition. We need her expertise without her visibility. I read it twice, then a third time, each word burning itself into my memory. Without hesitation, I forwarded the entire thread to my personal email, then printed hard copies. The pages were still warm from the printer when I locked them in my personal filing cabinet. They wanted to steal my work. They wanted to erase 5 years of innovation and hand it to a man whose greatest achievement was mastering the art of the firm handshake. They wanted me invisible. I pulled up the Westport Federal file, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. One email to Janet Morrison explaining the transition, and the deal would survive. One phone call to smooth the path for Cole, and the company would secure its largest contract ever. Instead, I closed the file and opened a new document, Strategic Transition Guide for Cole Watkins. Page 1. Understanding Financial Analytics Solutions. Generic Industry Overview. Heavy on jargon. Light on substance. Page 2. Client Relationship Management Best Practices. Textbook theories that would crumble at the first real client meeting. Page 3. The Westport Opportunity. Carefully crafted half-truths that painted a picture just clear enough to be convincing, just vague enough to be catastrophic. By 6:30, the office had emptied except for the cleaning crew and me. I saved the guide, emailed it to Cole with enthusiastic notes about his exciting journey ahead, and began my real work. Personal phone to Janet Morrison. Hi, Janet. It's Naomi. I wanted to give you a heads up about some organizational changes. I'll be transitioning your account over the next few weeks. Yes, I understand your concerns about confidentiality. Of course, I'll ensure a smooth handoff. I didn't mention Cole's name, didn't explain that smooth had different definitions, didn't reveal that I'd spent 3 years building trust with Janet after her previous vendor had burned her by going public with her company's interest prematurely. The rain had turned to snow by the time I left the office. As I waited for my Uber, I watched the flakes dust the city streets, covering everything in pristine white, clean, silent. Like me, they had no idea what they'd just set in motion. In their arrogance, they'd forgotten that the quiet ones were usually quiet for a reason. We were watching, we were learning, we were waiting. And when we finally made noise, it would be deafening. Week 2 of the transition, and Cole had transformed into my eager shadow. Every morning at 8:15, he'd appear with his overpriced coffee and leather portfolio, ready to absorb wisdom I had no intention of sharing. Let's dive into relationship mapping today, I suggested, pulling up a sprawling diagram on my monitor, boxes and arrows connected in an elaborate web that looked impressive and meant nothing. Fascinating, Cole murmured, leaning forward. So Morrison at Westport Federal reports to the executive committee, I said smoothly, which was technically true but practically useless. What I didn't mention was that Janet Morrison despised committees, made every decision unilaterally, and only included them as a formality after contracts were signed. I walked him through my comprehensive CRM entries, sanitized profiles that read like LinkedIn summaries. Robert Chen at Meridian Group appreciates data-driven presentations. True, but meaningless, without knowing he only reviewed materials printed on cream paper, not white, because his dyslexia made high contrast difficult. Sandra Williams at Peak Financial values innovation and efficiency. Accurate. If you ignored her requirement that all proposals include exactly 7 sections, her lucky number since surviving 7 rounds of layoffs. This is gold, Cole said, typing furiously on his tablet. You've built such detailed profiles. It's important to document everything, I agreed, watching him record surface-level observations that would serve him as well as a paper umbrella in a hurricane. The real intelligence lived in my head and my personal files. 3 years of birthday cards sent to executives' assistants. Lunch preferences memorized for every decision-maker. The knowledge that Janet Morrison's favorite restaurant had changed their Thursday afternoon reservation system, which is why she now only took calls at 2:15 right after her standing lunch appointment ended. Question about the Westport proposal, Cole said, scrolling through the draft I'd prepared. Why did you position the ROI metrics in Section 4 instead of leading with them? Because Janet's nephew had lost his job to an algorithm that prioritized metrics over people, and she needed to see the human impact first. It creates better narrative flow, I said instead. Brilliant, he nodded, missing the point entirely. I'm thinking of restructuring it, though. Hit them with the numbers up front. Really grab their attention. I maintained my expression. That's certainly an approach. By Thursday, Cole had accumulated 3 binders of my carefully crafted deception. He'd also started CCing Marcus and David on emails about his strategic vision, liberally borrowing my words while adding exclamation points and aggressive formatting. I've scheduled a prep meeting with Morrison for next Tuesday, he announced that afternoon, chest puffed with pride. My fingers stilled on the keyboard. Tuesday. Strike while the iron's hot. Right, I figured we should accelerate the timeline. Tuesday, when Janet would be in Milwaukee for her daughter's research presentation, the daughter she'd mentioned exactly once, in passing, during a conversation about educational analytics 2 years ago. Did her assistant confirm? I asked mildly. Left a voicemail. I'm sure it's fine. I returned to my screen. I'm sure it is. That evening, I drafted my weekly transition report for Marcus, glowing praise for Cole's enthusiasm, confirmation that knowledge transfer was proceeding exactly as planned, no mention of the disaster I could see approaching like a freight train in the dark. My personal phone buzzed. Janet Morrison. Naomi, I got the strangest voicemail about a Tuesday meeting. You know I won't be in town. I'm sure it's just a scheduling mix-up, I said. Cole's still learning the rhythms. A pause. Cole Watkins. He'll be taking over the relationship. The silence stretched longer this time. I see. And you didn't think to introduce us properly, I assumed he'd follow standard protocol. A lie wrapped in truth. I'd trained him on everything except the protocols that mattered. Naomi, her voice carried a warning. I don't like surprises. You know that. I do, I said quietly. I absolutely do. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, watching Lake Michigan churn gray and angry beyond my windows. Cole would show up Tuesday to an empty office. He'd scramble to reschedule. Janet would be annoyed but might give him another chance, or she might not. I opened my laptop and reviewed the materials I'd given him one more time. Comprehensive, detailed, utterly useless without the context I'd withheld. They wanted me to train my replacement. I was doing exactly that. Training him to fail so spectacularly that my silence would sound like a symphony. The city lights blurred through the rain-streaked glass. Somewhere out there, Cole was probably celebrating his upcoming meeting. David was congratulating himself on his strategic maneuvering, and Marcus was preparing investor presentations featuring projects I'd built from nothing. Let them celebrate. The higher they climbed on the ladder I'd built, the farther they'd have to fall. And I'd be there, quiet as always, to watch them hit every rung on the way down. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, marked with the red exclamation point that meant Marcus considered it urgent. The subject line alone made my coffee taste sweeter. Westport Federal. Acceleration required. Team, I'm pleased to announce that Cole will be leading our Westport Federal engagement effective immediately. This $94 million opportunity represents our largest potential contract this year. Cole, your innovative approach and leadership energy are exactly what we need to close this deal. Please coordinate with all stakeholders to ensure we maintain momentum. The board is watching this one closely. Marcus. I watched Cole read it 3 times, his face cycling through pride, panic, and false confidence. He strutted to my office 15 minutes later, designer shoes clicking against the floor like a countdown. Looks like it's showtime, he said, attempting casual authority. I'll need all your Westport files transferred to my drive today. Of course, I replied, fingers already moving across the keyboard. I'll send you everything. Everything. 400 slides of polished presentations, 57 email threads with mid-level managers, budget projections accurate to the penny. What I didn't send Janet Morrison's direct line, the knowledge that she despised mass emails and considered CCing her team a breach of trust, the fact that her company was in a quiet merger discussion that made confidentiality paramount. This deal feels pretty straightforward, Cole said, scrolling through the files on his phone. Big company needs analytics. We provide analytics. Should be simple. I nodded, letting him believe it. Absolutely straightforward. That afternoon, I overheard him on a conference call with the sales team. Let's leverage this opportunity for maximum visibility. I want press releases ready. Social media strategy locked. When we land Westport Federal, everyone should know Cole Watkins made it happen. My fingers paused on my keyboard. Press releases, social media, for a company that hadn't even signed an NDA yet, whose executives valued discretion above all else. Thursday brought the first tremor. A terse email from Janet Morrison's assistant. Ms. Morrison has concerns about information security. Please confirm your confidentiality protocols. Cole forwarded it to me with a single line, handle this. I crafted a response that was professionally perfect and completely inadequate. I assured her of our standard security measures, without mentioning the enhanced protocols I'd personally developed for their account, without the password-protected communication channels, without the encrypted file sharing system Janet expected. Sent, I told Cole. She should be satisfied. By Friday, the tremors had become quakes. Cole had scheduled a Westport Victory Summit for the following week, inviting half the company to align on our winning strategy. He'd posted about the game-changing partnership on LinkedIn, carefully avoiding the company name but dropping enough hints that anyone in the industry could connect the dots. I kept my head down, transitioning my other accounts, documenting processes, playing the good soldier. When Sarah Lou asked if I was okay with the change, I offered my practiced smile. Cole has such energy. He'll do great things. Monday arrived with Chicago's first real snowstorm of the season. I watched from my window as Cole paced the conference room, practicing his presentation for the Victory Summit. Slides flashed on the screen my work, my strategies, my relationships, now branded with his name in bold Arial font. At 10:30, my phone buzzed, a text from my former colleague at Westport Federal. Someone Cole didn't even know existed. Janet's furious. Someone leaked the partnership discussions. Legal's involved now. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and knocked on the conference room door. Cole, there's a call for you. He followed me to his office, still riding high on his practice performance. The phone was already ringing when we arrived. Janet Morrison's assistant, her voice arctic. Mr. Watkins, Ms. Morrison needs to speak with you immediately. I closed his door softly behind me, but not before I heard Janet's opening words. Mr. Watkins, I don't know who you are or why you think you can discuss our confidential negotiations on social media, but back at my desk, I pulled up the Westport Federal folder one last time. Everything Cole needed was there. Contact information for the wrong people, strategies for the wrong approach, confidence in the wrong assumptions. The Victory Summit was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 1:45, Cole still hadn't emerged from his office. Marcus walked by, his face tight with concern. Have you seen Cole, the team's gathering? He's on an important call, I said mildly, with Westport Federal. Marcus's face went pale. He rushed toward Cole's office just as the door opened. Cole stood there, tie askew, face the color of old paper. They're out, he said, voice hollow. They're pulling out of negotiations. Something about breach of confidentiality, unauthorized disclosure, compromised trust. His eyes found mine. I don't understand. I followed everything in your guides. I stood slowly, gathering my notebook for the summit that would never happen. That's unfortunate, I said, my voice carrying just the right note of sympathy. The Westport team values their privacy above everything else. I thought that was clear in the documentation. It wasn't. I'd made sure of that. As the news rippled through the office, as Marcus's phone began its inevitable angry buzzing, as David Morse appeared looking for someone to blame, I returned to my desk and filed my transition reports in neat, color-coded folders. $94 million, gone. Not because of what I'd done, but because of what I'd chosen not to say. The beautiful efficiency of strategic silence. They'd wanted me quiet. Mission accomplished. The aftermath unfolded like a perfectly choreographed disaster. Tuesday morning brought an emergency leadership meeting at 7:30, the kind where executive assistants cancel everything and security guards gossip in hushed tones by the elevators. I arrived at my usual time, coffee in hand, to find the 14th floor buzzing with barely contained panic. Through the glass walls of the main conference room, I could see Marcus pacing, David Morse gesticulating wildly, and Rachel from HR typing furiously on her laptop. Cole sat at the far end of the table, shoulders hunched, staring at his hands. Naomi, Sylvia from accounting grabbed my arm as I passed. Did you hear Westport Federal sent a formal complaint to the board? They're threatening to blacklist us from their entire network. I arranged my face into appropriate concern. That's terrible. What happened? Cole posted something on LinkedIn, tagged industry leaders. Westport's legal team saw it as a breach of their NDA. The NDA, I'd never told Cole existed because it was signed at the relationship level, not the company level, a nuance that lived in my personal files, not the corporate system. My desk phone was ringing when I reached my office. Marcus's assistant, voice strained, "He needs to see you, now." The conference room felt like a funeral when I entered. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. David wouldn't meet my eyes. Rachel clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Sit," Marcus commanded. "Tell me everything about the Westport relationship." I folded my hands carefully. I maintained their account for 3 years. We were in final negotiations for a $94 million enterprise agreement. I provided Cole with comprehensive transition materials. "Did you tell him about the NDA?" David interrupted. "All relevant documentation was included in the transition files," I said, which was technically true. The NDA reference was buried on page 847 of the appendix, in a footnote. Christ, Marcus rubbed his temples. "Do you have any idea what this means? Janet Morrison sits on the boards of 6 major financial institutions. If she blacklists us..." "I understand the gravity," I said quietly. "Do you..." His voice cracked. The board called an emergency session for tomorrow. They want answers. They want accountability. He turned to Cole. They want to know how someone with 9 months of experience was handed our largest deal. Cole finally looked up, desperation clear in his eyes. I followed Naomi's guides exactly. She said the relationship was straightforward. I said the analytics were straightforward, I corrected gently. Relationships are never simple. My phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number that I recognized immediately. Jessica Chen from legal. Check your email. Urgent. I excused myself, returning to my office to find a forwarded message from Westport Federal's legal team. The damage was worse than they knew. Not only were they pulling out, but they'd already informed their network about the security breach. The informal blacklist would be devastating. But there was something else, a separate email from my personal account, forwarded by my friend at Virellus Tech. Heard about the Westport situation. Still interested in talking. We value people who understand discretion. I closed the email and returned to the conference room, where the blame game had reached full velocity. Should have verified the transition, Rachel was saying. Cole assured us he was ready, David countered. Naomi's responsibility to Marcus stopped when I entered. We need solutions. Can you reach out to Janet? Smooth this over. I let the silence stretch just long enough. I can try, but relationships built on trust, once broken. I shrugged delicately. Try, he ordered. Whatever it takes. I returned to my office and dialed Janet's direct line, the one Cole never knew existed. She answered on the second ring. Naomi. Her voice could have frozen Lake Michigan. I assume you're calling to apologize for your company's catastrophic breach of trust. I'm calling to apologize for the position you were put in, I said carefully. I know how much you value discretion. A pause. You knew this would happen. It wasn't a question. Janet Morrison hadn't built a billion-dollar division by missing subtext. I provided all the information that was requested of me, I said. Another pause. I heard Virellus has been courting you. The corporate world was smaller than people realized. I've had some conversations. Good. They understand the value of quiet competence. Her tone shifted slightly. Naomi, I'll be direct. Court alone is dead to us. But you still have my number. Use it wisely. The line went dead. I sat back in my chair, watching snow swirl past my window. In the conference room, the leadership team was still dissecting their failure, still searching for someone to blame besides themselves. My computer chimed. An email from Marcus. Status update on Morrison call ASAP. I began typing my response, each word carefully chosen. The deal was dead. The relationship was severed. The $94 million they'd counted on had evaporated like morning mist. All because they'd confused noise with leadership, volume with value. My phone buzzed again. Virellus Tech. This time, I answered. The quarterly strategy meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. The entire C-suite would be there, along with 3 board members who'd flown in specifically to understand how $94 million had vanished into thin air. I arrived early, placing my materials at my usual spot by the window. The presentation Cole was supposed to deliver lay on the center table like evidence at a crime scene. My slides, my strategies, his name on every page. By 1:55, the room filled with tense bodies in expensive suits. Marcus looked haggard. David Morse kept checking his phone. Rachel from HR had developed a nervous tic, constantly adjusting her glasses. Cole entered last, his earlier bravado replaced by something that might have inspired sympathy if I'd been capable of feeling it. Let's begin, Marcus said, his voice carrying forced authority. Cole, take us through the Westport situation. Cole stood, clicked to the first slide, and immediately stumbled. So, Westport Federal